This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. In my last video, I talked about what the Browns might need to go shopping for on both sides of the ball. Today, I'm going to get a little bit more specific about that, right? What players could the Browns add to their defense in 2025 that could supercharge it via the draft or free agency? We're going to go through every single position and bring up options and players who make sense both in the draft and in the free agency and in different parts of the draft. This should be a fun guide for anybody who's looking to get in to draft coverage or free agency coverage once the offseason starts, because these are names that you're going to want to be familiar with by the time that we get to the end of this season, because they might potentially be solutions for problems that the Cleveland Browns have. Let's start with defensive backs, right? Now, the Browns don't really have a problem at defensive back, to be honest. I don't see them going out their way and adding a ton of defensive backs. I don't see them going out in free agency and signing somebody. Honestly, they're probably going to let go of a defensive back, Greg Newsome, to free up about $13 million of cap space. So I don't see them being heavy players in the free agency defensive back market. Maybe in the draft, if one of these players becomes available on like an incredible value play, then they'll go there, right? Will Johnson, Travis Hunter, Siobhan Revel Jr., right, who's going to be, I think he's at the East-West Shrine game this year, but he was projected to be a first-round corner before he hurt his knee, I believe, in the season. And then Travis Hunter, incredible instincts at corner, really great corner prospect. Same thing can be said with Will Johnson. So outside of one of those guys being available at a spot you just don't anticipate, I don't see the Browns going after a corner. What I do think the Browns will be interested in is safety, right? I think there's a number of options they can go with in safety, right? They need a run defender. They need second-tier run defenders, which are your run defenders on the second level of the defense, right? Your linebackers, your safeties. The Browns don't really have a ton of those. Budda Baker is a guy who could be available right now. The projection for him is about $6.5 million per year on him, which is a very fair number. Budda Baker has great instincts. He's undersized, but a consistently solid run defender. Another free agent that might make sense is Justin Reed. He's another guy who has been a consistently solid run defender, and both of these guys can play free safety and make plays from the safety position. That's what they have been known for. If you're looking for players in the draft, I think Lathan Ransom from Ohio State is somebody to look out for. Not going to be a playmaker in pass coverage, but is going to be a playmaker in run defense. He's been a very, very solid run defender at Ohio State. And Andrew Makuba, he used to play at Clemson. Now he plays at Texas. If you're going to watch the college football playoff, go ahead and watch him because he is somebody who's going to be a good slot corner / safety, really good run defender, solid tackler for a defensive back. So those are the guys round 3 or later I would look at. If we're talking about late round free agent guys, Cameron Silman-Craig makes a lot of sense here. He's a really good run defender coming out of Colorado, pretty raw athlete too. So I think there's something that you can get out of him. Wouldn't spend a high pick on him, but if he's there late or as a UDFA, as like a premium UDFA, somebody you bring in immediately after the end of the draft, then I think that makes a ton of sense there. If we're looking for slot corners, I think Kobe Bryant probably is the guy who projects to be the best slot corner in this year's draft. I don't think he's going to be a boundary corner in the NFL, but slot, I think he'll be fine there. There's other guys, Don Jones, Jordan Scruggs. If we're looking for somebody at the back end of the draft, Shamari Simmons could be another name that could be possible for the Browns to go after. Linebacker, I think, is a very interesting market, right? Because you're going to hear some names that you are familiar with especially when it comes to free agents. Like Dre Greenlaw, right? He had that injury last year. He was a really, really solid player, but now he's at the end of his contract. He's coming off an injury. Might be somebody you could do a sign and trade with. Might be somebody you might be able to get on pretty decent value. And I think that's kind of where the Browns are, right? The Browns aren't going to have money to go get the top end guy, but they're going to be able to go ahead and go after some value picks, right? The Browns got to do a lot of value shopping. In that same vein, Isaiah Simmons could be a value pick for them, right? Somebody who's not projected to make a ton of money in this offseason, super young, still a lot of upside. I think if you figure out the right spot for him, you could do something with them. And given that the Browns were able to figure out Grant Delpit, I think they could figure out Isaiah Simmons as well. That might be a play. You can go out to somebody more established who's going to be a little bit more expensive, like a Nick Bolton. I don't really see them going that far there. You can get a Jamian Sherwood. That can also be somebody who's established as well. Or you can go after like Kaiser White. There's some options in free agency. I expect them to go after a veteran. The draft is interesting when it comes to linebacker. Like I'm not in love with Jalen Walker as a linebacker in this year's class for whatever reason. Every time I go and watch Georgia, I want to fall in love with him as a prospect because he's a lot of what I like in a linebacker on paper. But when I watch him, I don't know, there's something not there that I don't love. Now, the opposite of that, right? This is not a guy who's getting a ton of draft love right now and a ton of prospect love. But every time I watch him, I go and think to myself, damn, I like this dude. I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL. Jackson Woodard from UNLV. I've watched him play a couple times this year. He is fearless when it comes to stopping the run and when it comes to making tackles on the perimeter. He just gets out there. He's a great hustler. He's smart, instinctive player. I think he's going to be a solid NFL player. We got to see how he tests at the combine because the athletic ability of him might be something that you worry about. But everything else when it comes to linebacker, especially somebody who could play alongside JOK, I think he'll do really good at. Danny Strutman is another one, great run defender out of Oklahoma. He's somebody that the Browns will be looking at in the draft as well. Now let's move on to edge because although the Browns aren't going to be looking that much at the edge rusher position in this offseason, I do think there are some opportunities there if the Browns want to upgrade, right? You can go get Chase Young, who I'm going to refer to as new Jadeveon Clowney. Like, he's basically the same thing, right? Chase Young was a very highly touted prospect coming out of college. He never quite lived up to that prospect coming out of college. The production isn't there. And you have the same kind of concerns that you have with him that you had with Clowney. Oh, he takes some plays off. He's not always hustling. You know, the same stuff that you worried about with Clowney, you worry about with him. And he's a similar price to Jadeveon, about 9.4. If the Browns really want to add another edge and maybe they feel like they're closer to winning now than what I do, then going after him would make sense. The same thing would be for like Josh Sweat. It's another win now decision. He's going to be about $12.5 million a year. And then you have guys who could be a little bit of a flyer. Azeez Ojulari. He played for the Giants for a little while. He's a draft prospect I really like coming out of college. Very productive player. 6.7 annual. Right now, he's projected about 6.7 APY. I think that'd be somebody to look into. Joseph Osai is another one that you can go ahead and take a flyer on. I just don't see the Browns being in flyer mode this offseason at edge because they have already 4 guys on the roster that they like in Alex Wright, Myles Garrett, Isaiah McGuire, and then Obo Okoronkwo. There's not really a lot of room to add a couple guys who'd be flyers. So I think they're in a similar spot at edge as they are at corner, where they're not going to add anybody at edge unless like somebody falls into their lap that they cannot believe they're getting for the value that they're getting out of them, right? 4 names pop up to me. Well, 5 names pop up to me, right? If the value is right. Abdul Carter at any place is incredible value. This is somebody who people project to be similar to Micah Parsons, a very athletic player, a very, like, you just go watch Penn State play, go watch number 11 on defense. He's pretty damn good. I don't really got to do much to explain that. Abdul Carter, if you can get him and pair him up with Myles, hopefully you get a healthy JOK next year, and then you can move those pieces around. That will be something to watch, most certainly, if you can go out and add somebody like an Abdul Carter. Another player that I think would be an interesting fit with Myles Garrett, Mykel Williams out of Georgia. Very long guy, like a super long defender, really athletic guy as well. It looks bigger than what he's listed at, right? He's listed, I think, at like 240 or something like that. He looks at least 250, 260 when you watch him play football. My theory with the NFL is when it comes to stopping the run, when it comes to a lot of the things that NFL teams want to do, you want somebody who's built like Calais Campbell on your defensive line more than you want the traditional 400-pound three-tech, right? And Mykel Williams is not going to be a three-tech. He's going to be an edge rusher for sure. But he's long and strong enough to be able to fit inside and do some of that stuff next to Myles Garrett. And then when you add somebody with that kind of length, that kind of athletic ability, they're going to do a really good job of cleaning up for Myles Garrett when guys purposely escape. Like, that's why Abdul Carter makes a ton of sense to me too, because Abdul Carter is such a great athlete that if you want to run away from Myles, you're going to have to run towards Abdul Carter, and he's probably going to get you. The same thing is true for Mykel Williams on the lower level, because he's not the same athlete Abdul is, but he's much bigger and longer than Abdul Carter is. Now, I wouldn't take Mykel like in the top 5 of the draft, but if you trade back and you're sitting at like 15, 16 and Mykel's there, I find that hard to pass up if you're the Browns here. Then you have guys who, if they're available early 3rd round, late 2nd, you might want to jump to the podium, go ahead and get them. JT out of Ohio State, and then Jack Sawyer also out of Ohio State. Both guys who I think, because of their situation, haven't been able to be as productive as you would want them to be. But both guys, I think, can be very productive as well. Let's talk about interior defensive line and some options that may be available to you on the interior of the defensive line, which I think this is going to be a good class for both free agent and draft when you're talking about value signings. Milton Williams, I think somebody you can get in free agency, about 4.5 APY. Bobby Brown III, another guy you could probably get for cheap. Those are kind of the free agent options. Some of these guys are pass rushers, right? Like Milton and Levi are both pass rushers. Bobby Brown III and Tershawn are both kind of run defenders. So, you know, I would honestly with Tershawn, I really want to do it unless it's less than $5 million a year. But if you look at the draft, Mason Graham, he's going to be a hell of a player on the interior. You're going to have to draft him super early, but that's somebody you can go ahead and get. Kenneth Grant, you get him in the early second, early 3rd, you'd be super happy. Tyleik Williams, same kind of range here. Omar Norman Lott, same range there. There are going to be a lot of options for the Browns if they want to go down the path of supercharging the defense to be able to do it. I'm interested to see if that's going to be the path that they want to go down, but it's something that they could definitely consider. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What players do you have your eyes on and you want to see me talk about as we get closer and closer to free agency and the draft? Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.